Pete and Patsy were married for a while now, but unlike when they were dating, which was characterized by a lot of hugs, kisses, and all those things people do when dating, this marriage was characterized by hurt, anger, pain, and avoidance. In fact, Pete didn't want to be in the same space with Patsy. After some time, he was convinced to follow her for counseling, and during counseling, he opened up and said he wanted Patsy to take the initiative to touch him and make him feel loved. And because she never took that initiative, he actually preferred to avoid her because he was scared of rejection. Hello everybody, compliments of the season, and welcome once again to the Review With Me podcast. I'm your host and your walk through reading coach, Mrs. Peace. I hope you've been able to catch up on all our previous episodes of the book we are reading. And if you're just joining us and wondering what is going on here, well, just hold on. This is a space where we review books, and the current book we are reading and reviewing is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and we are in chapter 7. I hope you were able to catch up on the last episode, Acts of Service. Alright, so please, if you're watching this video right now, I would just like you to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Tag someone who you know needs this particular episode. And if you're ready, come right in and let's get straight to the point. And if you've guessed from the story, today we are talking about the love language, physical touch. Yes. Okay, so let's go straight in. Now, of all the 5 senses, touching is unlike the other ones. Why? Because touching is not just limited to one localized area, just like words of affirmation and all that. Touching involves you touching, and just like the word itself is, it involves you touching every part of the body. And now, the body has tiny tactile receptors, which, when touched or pressed, the nerves in the body carries that message straight to the brain, and then the brain is able to interpret whether that touch is a warm touch or a cold touch, whether it is a touch of pleasure or pain, or even if it is a touch of hate or a touch of hostility or love. So the tactile receptors in the body are the ones that receive the touch, and the nerves transport it to the brain for interpretation. Also note that some parts of the body are more sensitive to touch than other parts of the body. And why is this? It's because that same tactile receptors is not evenly distributed amongst the body. It is clustered in some parts more than others. And that's why we have some places to be more sensitive to touch. For example, the tongue. And meanwhile, some places that are less sensitive to touch could be the shoulder. Alright, so now, this tactile, as I've said, the tactile receptors are arranged in clustered forms. Now, therefore, people are asking, why is she explaining this? As much as the neurological aspect of touching is important for you to understand why some parts of the body are more sensitive to touch than others. Today, our focus is on the psychological importance of touching and how it aids to fill up the love tank of a person whose emotional love language is physical touch. Now, physical touch can either make or break a relationship, as it can either communicate hate or love. Therefore, in marriage, a loving touch to almost any part of the body can be an expression of love. But that doesn't mean that the way those touch is affecting every part of the body equally. Some areas of the body bring more pleasure when touched than other parts of the body. Also note that touch on its own the touch that will bring pleasure to you may not be the same touch that will bring pleasure to your spouse, because we are all unique and different. So what you feel pleasure, or if your language is physical touch, and the part you feel that if it is sensitive to you may not be the same sensitive spot of your spouse. That's why communication is very important. Now, we also go ahead to find out that there are two types of touches. There is a touch that is explicit and touch that is implicit. So love touches can be explicit. When we say explicit, it means it requires our full attention. For example, touches like massage. I know there are a lot of us, when you're worked out this period of the holidays and the, younghood, you just need that full body massage. That's an explicit touch. Another kind of explicit touch are sexual touch that has to do with foreplay that ends up leading to sexual intimacy. And then we have the implicit touch. This touch does not require full attention. It could be a pat on the shoulder, a little hug. So now, what do we have to say about the explicit and the implicit touch? Note that the explicit touch requires more time that is especially if your spouse's love language is sexual intercourse. You heard me right. There are some people who, in order to feel loved, and that hence you find out that those people have a high sexual libido to a certain level because their love language is sexual intercourse. So if you have somebody whose love language is sexual intercourse as a spouse, you have to pay full attention, and that is implicit touch. But now explicit touch, But now implicit touch does not require full attention, but it requires thoughtfulness. It has to be very specific. It leaves you to your imagination, because at this point you don't know which touch in particular will be okay for your spouse, and that is where communication comes in. In all the love languages, communication is very, very important. So implicit touch leaves a lot of things to your imagination. So when you're touching your spouse and the person, try to find out, get feedback. Do you like it when I touch you here? How do you feel when I touch you in this place, or I touch you this way? We have to be open in order to know and also encourage our spouse. Some people just need a hug. Some people sometimes want to be hugged from the back when they are in the kitchen. Some just want their spouse to hold their hands. Implicit touch differs in different ways. Just find out which one suits your spouse. Now, I'll be going to the next part of the book, which is the body is meant for touching. God made our body to be meant for touching, because whatever there is of you resides in your body. So to touch you is to touch your body, and to withdraw from you is to withdraw from your body is to also withdraw from you. If you remember the story I said at the beginning, Pete began to withdraw from his wife. He didn't touch her. He didn't want to be in the same space with her. He was scared of rejection, and because she wasn't taking the initiative to touch him, because she was already physically withdrawn from him, he began to withdraw from her emotionally. So there are appropriate touch and inappropriate touch, especially for people who are not in a relationship. We should also teach our children. Now, here's a parenting tip. You have to learn to teach your children appropriate touch and inappropriate touch. But when it comes to marriage, it is the duty of the couple or the spouse themselves to sit and decide what is appropriate and what is inappropriate to them. Because for some people, it's okay to actually kiss every part of the body, touch every part of the body, but there are some people whose values and beliefs don't allow them to do that. So it's left for the spouse to decide which is appropriate and inappropriate. Now, why is this? Is because some touch also can be physical abuse, and I hope we know that physical abuse also happens in marriage, and it's not just limited to the women being abused. Nowadays, even men are also abused. So please discuss with your spouse, which still brings us back to communication. As we call it a wrap, I also like to state that your body is meant for touching. The body of your spouse is meant for touching. Even for someone whose love language is not physical touch, the body is still meant for touching. Please note that whenever your spouse is in crisis or in times of crisis, what's your spouse? Physical touch is very important. It may just require that you hold that person and hug the person, or you just hold their hands. It could be that the spouse requires a hug. It could be that they require you to just hold their hands and just show that you are there. That on its own speaks volume and makes the person whose love language is physical touch know that you are there for them. It makes them know that you love them. And why am I saying this? Because all marriages go through crisis. Yes, marriage is sweet, but it also has its crisis aspect, and that's why it's very important for couples to learn about conflict resolution and how to handle conflicts in marriage. But physical touch plays a very important role in ensuring that when someone is going through crisis, especially if their love language is physical touch, they get to calm down. Now, how did the story of Pete and Patsy end? After counseling, Patsy got to understand, because Patsy felt like Pete was always the one taking the initiative, and now that he has stopped, maybe she did something wrong. But with him opening up, she started learning to extend. She started learning how to touch. She started learning how to consciously touch Pete and ask him what he felt. And before you know what was happening, their marriage began to blossom again. You could find Pete and Patsy working, holding hands, hugging each other, sharing little kisses, and so on and so forth. Marriage can actually be very sweet once you get to understand your own love language and the love language of your spouse. Remember, the aim of loving someone is to love them the way they understand and not the way you understand love. Based on this, I will be drawing the curtain on this episode. But before I do so, I would like you to reflect and recall some sexual touches and the touching that happened the times you were touched during sexual intimacy with your husband. Which one in particular spoke out for you? If you're confused to know if you're actually a physical touch person, you can just find out for yourself. Based on the times I've been touched by my husband, did I really feel love? What did it speak to me? Did it help me feel like my husband or my wife is seeing me? Based on this, we'll draw a close to this particular chapter. If you're a physical touch person, or you have a spouse who is a physical touch person and you don't know how to go about it, remember, I always drop the pages where you can find some clues, because this book is holistic and complete. So in order to find some ways on how to go about physical touch and being touchy and romantic, you'll find that on page 76 of the book. Remember, the link to the book will also be dropped in the bio. Thank you very much for staying with me till this time. I hope I didn't keep you so long, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Invite others, and let's recultivate once again the reading culture in our society. I'll be expecting to hear from you as you drop your comments in the comment section. Thank you very much, and God bless you.